7,000 COVID-19 cases. That's what Malaysia just hit. There are countless stories of people dying due to complications. Death seems so much closer, not just for older people, but for the same younger ones as well. Today, we talk about whether we are afraid of death and how to grieve during a time where grieving isn't at all accessible.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Tabletop Podcast. Today with us, we've got our boy Lucas. He needs no more introduction, but if you don't know who he is, he's one half of the Fashion Week podcast.
Pew pew.
What a time to be alive, guys. And I say that with a grain of salt because we're talking about death today, guys.
You guys can see we are already back in the home studios, being safe. Hope you guys are being safe. Yo, guys, this is not a. It's not a cool time, man. It's really not. What was the case numbers yesterday? At the time of recording yesterday, we hit what,
7.6?
Like, I think it was like 7, 3, 7, 4, 7,
we're
5,
going
7,
for the big
6 around
10K.
there.
Is it like what's the plan?
I think it's road to 10K already. Legit, it's road to 10K. It's hard to say, to be honest. I think like everyone now, there's a fear. And I quite like it because, you know, a couple of months ago when the talk about vaccines were coming up, people were like, oh, I want to choose, I'll go this for later. Then you see yesterday, everyone was like, me, give me the vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, do Malaysians really need some kind of fear to encourage action?
I think need. Lucas, what do you think?
Fear is the best motivator for anything. Fear and rage, dude. Fear and rage. To spite people and to be scared, wow, that's the best motivation for anything.
Isn't that such a beautiful thing to say in this like absolute snowflake world where everyone is like, no, you know, you can't use aggression, you can't use fear. You're gonna talk to everyone and make everyone understand. Oh, now 7K cases. The fear in only got people movement. Before this, all the woke ass stupid people go and still take photo in cafe and eat here, eat there. It's not going to get me because I mask up. Well, surprise.
We're in MCO3 and then they're telling us to double mask now.
You know.
Yep.
MCO1, they were like, no such thing, no need double mask. Now they're like,
jokes on them. Whenever I go out, I stuff my mouth full of toilet paper already. Then only I put the mask. I don't know what you're doing.
So welcome back again, Lucas, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We wanted to get somebody who was, you know, someone who could provide a bit more. What's the right word here? Sunshine and joy.
Oh, thank you. That's why you called me for this really dark topic of death.
It's true. It's been a while, but I think for everyone who doesn't follow us on socials, Minghan and I, we've gone through a series of deaths in the family. Our grandfather passed away a couple of weeks ago, and our grandmother less than a week after that, actually.
Condolences,
due to
man.
COVID.
Condolences.
Thanks so much, dude. But it's been a time of just processing a lot of things, and I think we should talk about this maybe just a bit. And for everyone who gets triggered by death and who is sensitive about this topic, you might want to turn a blind eye and deaf ear for this one.
Maybe you should go listen to Fashion Week.
Yeah, maybe listen to Fashion Week. This week we're talking about death, and as Asians, right? How do we actually feel about it? Especially like Minghan said in the opening, in a time of a pandemic, right? So just to give everyone a quick recap, Minghan, what happened?
Like to our grandparents or like to the pandemic? Oh, I see.
Yes, to our grandparents.
Not about the country, man.
Yeah, no. There's people in the news about that already.
I think basically right now there's a lot, even to our own sister, right? Here's the thing where people don't get. What's happening right now is that there are so many stray cases, all right? That means you literally have no idea who you contracted it from. So you could be just minding your own business, doing your own things, and then suddenly poof, voila, one day, fever, cough, COVID, surprise, just like that. And this is at a time where we, quote unquote, are supposed to have gotten the hang of SOPs, but no, Malaysians be popping, man. Malaysians,
we are a year in, right? And it's like we
got so comfortable with COVID being the neighbor next door, which we're never going to get it. And what happened was, I mean, okay, this is just like the TLDR. Our family went through a really intense season of close contact cases, right? And
just want to say, my sister wasn't the one who spread the COVID around.
So we did a post and it really blew up, for crying out loud. That's like the most viral thing that has happened to my Facebook ever. Some news sites picked it up. I had to take the post down because of family issues, and it was just people trying to grieve, right? And some news sites picked it up and reported it wrongly, so I took everything down. But TLDR, what happened was some of my family members got tested positive for COVID, right? Unrelated, out of nowhere, my grandpa passed away. My grandma was grieving and mourning, and she was tested to be positive. She checked into the ICU ward. It was nothing like, there's no drama or anything, and then she passed away 2 days later. I would think also that because my grandma and grandma really loved each other, it was a really hard time for her as well. Someone you're mourning the loss of your husband and you get checked into isolation. I don't think that's the easiest thing for anyone to go through. So TLDR, it's been crazy because we worried for my sister, worried for my parents, worried for my relatives, worried for my grandparents, my late grandparents now. So what have we learned from all this is, like, as a family, here's the deal, okay? You might not believe in COVID, but COVID believes in you, okay? And you can, trust me, I'm going to just take a quick vote. Like, you can, let's just get the numbers, okay? Currently, out of 10 Malaysians, how many Malaysians you think is actually being really safe and proper about the SOPs about COVID? Yeah.
Out of 10, 0.
I would say 2 or 1, right? Like, even for me, even for me, right? When the first MCO hit, I remember everything I get, right? The deliveries, I will wash the deliveries, I will wash the vegetable, I will double wash the chicken with Johnson & Johnson's baby bath.
That's different.
Yeah, I had tasted a bit of funny things for quite a while, I cannot go lie. But even now, right, like, I would say personally, and I still have quite a high standard for cleanliness, right? I have reduced my barriers of hygiene because it was just so so tedious. I cannot imagine what everyone else is doing right now. So is it safe to blame? I mean, we started a lot of blame on SOPs, people are making it. But at 7,000 cases, right, guys, let's just be real. Everyone has a part to play in this, okay? Everyone has a part to play. And it's not
I think without diverging too much back into the COVID situation again, because you guys know what we feel about it. I mean, just a quick update. A couple of us have got vaccinated already. Some of you guys have not. Some of you guys have signed up for it. We'll talk about it another time. Let's get back to the topic at hand. We're talking about death today, right?
Yep.
And I think as Asians, death is something that you generally don't want to talk about because
you got to deal with stuff.
We saw it, right? Yeah. It's bad fortune, it's bad omens, it's bad vibes, right? Lucas, growing up, what was your family's outlook on death in general?
For me, thankfully, I have not had many close encounters with death, with the exception of my late grandfather who passed away when I was about 7.
Okay.
My family has been, I would say, okay, let me just touch some wood right now. I haven't had any direct members of family pass away lah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the sunshine you want.
For us, for Minghan and myself, my family, we've seen a lot of death. I think growing up, just in general, not just because of family members. I think because my dad and mom are church leaders and elders, right? So whenever someone from the church circles, like even their family relatives, pass away, my dad usually attends to just kind of like show support or at least to help conduct the service and stuff like that. So that's why, I don't know, for some reason he would bring us along.
Take your kids
and I would go along as well, and then I'd just be like,
wow, it's a good idea. Hey, you come.
He's like, hey guys, after dinner we're going to stop by this a friend's place, but he'll never say what it is, and then it's a funeral, and we're like, oh shit, But I think maybe because of that, I've realized that we've grown so accustomed to death, right? That I don't want to say it's desensitized, but maybe for us, the immediate thing that we do or fall back on is how do we operate and function to the best of our ability. So like not just our grandfather now during this pandemic, right? Back a couple of years ago when my dad's dad passed away, this is my paternal grandfather, right? He passed away. We were in the office doing some work. My mom gave me a call. She's like, your grandfather passed away. Come down to Bangsa. We went down to Bangsa. A couple of people are crying. Of course I cried, but I was like, how do we optimize the situation now? What do we need to get done, right? And I feel maybe that's also really just because as like growing up, right? I realized that death isn't so much about that person who's passed away anymore.
Yeah,
it's about the people who are still here, right? Because that person, I mean, not being disrespectful, but also really being real. The flirt check out already, like he has left his current avatar You know, it's out already. So the only concerns, right, is actually the people around that person. So that's why I feel like again, not being disrespectful, but let's be real, like what do you need to get done? And that's how I guess maybe we also approached this situation where when my grandparents passed away. But I think what was difficult this time was because of the COVID situation. Minghan and I actually went to the police station to apply for a permission letter to travel to our grandparents' stay out of Selangor. Out of PJ Damansara, out of town. And so it was about a 45-minute drive away, and we went to get permission. But the police guy who attended to us told me and Minghan that we couldn't go because we were grandchildren.
Yeah, just want to say, this police officer was one of the nicest police officers we've ever
he wasn't rude or anything.
Right? He was superbly understanding. He was superbly empathetic. He was just like,
man,
so sorry boss, so sorry immediate family saja boleh pergi, semua cucu semua tak boleh. But thinking, talking about dealing, since Lucas does not have Choi, let's not have any experience. What is there a situation like, say, when you're in Boy Scouts or when you're in training for a certain thing, have you ever went through a routine that you're prepared for the worst? Have you ever been trained to deal with an extreme situation?
Well, you gotta give me more examples,
like people in Japan, they go through like earthquake drills, right? And then we have like fire drills, right? Like when some in some offices or in some apartments, right? I like my wife used to stay in an apartments which has like fire drills in the middle of nowhere, and you have to like then you have to know, it has to be like on reflex what to do, right? Have you ever?
Dude, let me just tell you this, man. Let me tell you this. If anything goes down, I'm dead. I'm first one dead.
You've had like
Number
zero.
one, 死了咯, die. Except that if you're gonna drown, I can actually give you CPR because I have like level 1 lifeguard training. But if the sea is a bit rough, I'm dead. Dude.
They call it a day.
But I say that because Mingyu actually put up a very good point. I think what makes the Asian culture a bit awkward around death is that not only do we not know how to react to it, we don't know how to react to it because no one talks about it. And the Asian culture of that whole sway, don't talk about it kind of thing, I feel like it's a very big coping mechanism to like, it's like how you just push love away and say like, have you eaten yet? Right? Like I think you don't deal with the real conversation in a lot of circumstances. And I feel like, to be honest, we've been through so many deaths that some cultures and some people have a very, very direct dealing of death. It depends on your family and your upbringing. But in general, I think it's a very sudden situation for a lot of relatives, because when a relative passes away, we've seen an outburst of emotions like crazy because they've just never experienced this before. And you've seen like the most hardy uncles and aunties, right? Suddenly express so much love for their parents that have passed away, or so much love for a sibling or a friend. And I feel that where this all comes from is a very real place. But why in the world is our culture so, I don't know, so negative towards preparing for death? They would rather deal with it than prepare for it.
Correct. Because I mean, even like we talk about preparation for death, right? And there's nothing that's more like necessary than something like a will. Has that ever come up in conversations with your parents before?
Man, I tell you, like until maybe this year, right? Like for the rest of the time, you don't really think about your parents passing away. Thank God, touch wood. And you're like, okay lah, it's eventually. And then when you turn like 30, because I'm like 35, 36, I'm like, oh man, my mom's getting slowly. And then suddenly out of nowhere, she said, boy, we're going to lawyer. I said, why? What did I do wrong? It's like, no, we're going to do, I need to do my will. Then I'm like, will? But what? I was like thinking about why? Oh, you're getting old. So that is a really implanted a thought in my mind. And you're right, we really generally don't think about it because obviously it's very sway. And like just that like instance of my mom saying, I need to do my will, is like, but wait, you can't die yet, man. Like you're still too young. But actually, if you count age, it's like my mom's in her 60s already.
Yeah, like all our parents are getting older, man.
Right? It's scary.
And it's the whole conversation about wills. I know people like I know there are, it's both sides of the fence, right? Like some is like parents who want to prepare their child for their passing. Then the children is like, guys, let's not talk about it, you know, like you know, your case. But then there are more extreme ones where the kid is like, mom, let's talk about, you know, insurance, life insurance, you know, let's talk about what if, you know, if you like pass on, right? Then this stuff, you want to go to your siblings, your relatives, and then, you know, the older generation will be like, don't talk about these things. You're cursing me to death, right? But realistically, I think just getting a lot of these things in order is necessary because when you die, you can't bring the stuff you have with you, man.
Would you guys do your own wills, right? Like, let's just say...
I already got a rough one now already, bro. Yeah, legit. Because every time my parents used to travel, right? My parents used to travel quite a bit. And every time they would go, right? My mom and dad would sit us down. They'd be like, all right, guys, you guys know the drill.
These are the documents.
This auntie from church she's going to be the executioner for the executor for the will. And then also for you guys need to call up the banks first. The booklet over here has all these. And we're like, wow.
What?
Dude, every single time they went on a trip, they would give us the what
it's
to do.
It's the most morbid
rundown
farewell you can ever get when your parents go for a trip.
It's next level, yeah.
Your family is
it's a bit realistic
crazy,
though.
It's quite local.
But yeah, my mom, because she's an accountant and she handles all the family stuff, I think she does it as safekeeping, right? So she's it is a hard practice, but it's also like it is like you said we are drilled for the fire, right? If anything happens, we kind of go into reflex mode, right? Because there will always be time for grieving, but I think when it comes to responsibility, like even now during the COVID, when you see that your parents, number one, like they can't go anywhere when they're in quarantine with my sister, right? It paints such a real picture, right? Of like, if you're not prepared for this, it can cause so much stress to like families, to relationships.
Yeah.
Because when my grandfather wasn't COVID positive, but when my grandma passed away, it's not easy, man. Like death and grieving and mourning, right? The last thing you want on your plate, right, is to handle logistics, right? But there was always one person in the family which is like super metal, you know, like there's no like let's get this done. And I feel that that's what our culture doesn't realize. Like we're always like, don't talk to me about death, you're cursing me to death, choi kind of thing. But when it hits, everyone's not prepared to deal with it, right? I've not seen like I don't know. I've only seen relationships getting strained because our older generations never sat down to talk about what's going to happen if something happens to me. They don't like to talk about if something happens to me. And seriously, as even when I was a kid, I never understood why. I mean, my parents brought me up. They were like, hey, if anything happens to you, go to the school nurse, you know. If this happens to you, go here. If this happens to you, go here. But no one talks about like, if this happens to me and I pass away, what's going to happen? That's crazy, you know, if you think about it. I mean, if you pass away, I got no reference already, you know. You better tell me what to do now, you know. That's my my logical thinking, right? But let's talk about the emotional side of it, right? The whole pandemic season has brought a superbly stressful element to death, right? It's the fact that, I mean, you guys have seen it online as well. All those nurses, the ICU medical staff, right? People are alone in their final moments, you know. And to be honest, right? Just to paint a picture how scary it is, if you all hate the dentist and you're left alone in the dentist seat by yourself and your father bolts on you and says he's going to get some coffee, that's the feeling, you know. Might or might not be from a real story because my dad left me alone on the dentist chair before. It's not the easiest thing, seriously. And you see a lot of these things that there was a very heartbreaking post the other day where the last FaceTime or the last video call before they get like intubated, because the minute that tube goes down your throat, you can't talk, right?
You're not talking,
and
right?
people. I mean, since fear is a tool that we're using apparently for everyone to go get vaccinated, dude, that's not a place you want your family members to be in, right?
Yeah. I think for us, like, just to recount what it was like for my grandmother, it happened so quick, right? That there was no time to process what happened, you know. Because so just to backtrack, right? My grandfather's funeral ended on like a Tuesday. Like a Tuesday morning, they brought him to be cremated. And at that time, my grandmother was already not doing too well. Like you could see that she was like, very weak, very tired. So of course, you mix all of the emotions plus physical state of a person. You can only imagine how weak a person can be, right? Next day, they realized that her blood pressure was extremely low. They rushed her to Tongshin Hospital. They got her there and never, but because of hospital SOPs, they can't treat you before they do a swab test. They did a quick swab test. They found out she was positive. And dude, that moment when they found out she was positive, to wheeling her off to the ICU, the isolated COVID ward, right?
That was it.
Was not even an hour. And the last person that could see her, right, was actually my mom. So my mom was with her, brought her in. They did the swab test. My mom was there. Once they found out she was positive, they put my mom in full-on safety gear, face mask, double mask, everything. Gloves and all, and my mom had maybe about 20 minutes with my grandmother. That was it. And after that, they brought her off into the isolated ward already. And I think for my mom, especially because she's the only daughter of the family as well, to see her mom go off like that, we reassure her and everything. The grandchildren, we put together a booklet of sorts with all of us writing wishes and pictures of us that Suyen helped to put together, gave it to the hospital. The nurse gave it to my grandmother. My grandmother read it, cried. And she was doing actually better the next day, but the following day, her situation just plummeted, and I think by lunchtime, she already passed away. Man. And that was crazy, dude. Just the time of like, wow, you thought that this person might get better, might get worse, and then
that small 20 minutes, right? Technically, right, that was a leeway that my mom was given because she was already in contact with my grandma.
Yeah.
What do you think about that right or that SOP lah? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, right, dude? That whole SOP about you cannot cross borders even though someone's dying. You cannot see your family member unless your immediate family. What do you think about that SOP? Because you're just not allowed to be in contact with a positive patient anyway, right? What's your thought about it? Like, should it be changed? Like, or is it something that, it makes sense? It makes sense kind of thing.
I think you should be allowed. I mean, even if it's a COVID death, right? You should be still allowed to give your family your last rites. That should not be denied. I think no matter if you're chuchu or if you're direct family, they shouldn't put a limit to how many. Because, I mean, this is the last time you're going to see someone before they, get burned on cremation or put underground. I mean, you should be allowed that. I mean, if they want to, they say, okay, after that, maybe you can quarantine yourself. You have a compulsory 10-day quarantine or something, if they have fear that you might go out and spread something or rather. But I think the last right should be respected, in my opinion.
I think it's a tough. Oh, I can hear Haley crying downstairs. Oh boy. I think it's definitely a tough call from all the doctors as well, because how intense the cases are, right? They really don't have time to weigh different situations and consider different people, because they want to reduce the risk of you getting COVID, right? And I feel that that's the biggest dilemma as well. Like, if you had someone at risk immediately, if you got COVID, would you go and do this as well? Because that's, I think, what grieving or any emergency in this season is going to be. You didn't mean for it, but to grieve, you need to, or you want to be in contact with that person. Would you risk it? Right?
If I'm COVID positive, hell no.
Exactly, right? Like, if you and your girlfriend, let's say, put in that situation, Choi, let's say never, but you get what I mean, right?
Choi.
You definitely want to be there with them, right? But would you? Would you risk it? And if situations deteriorate, would it compel you to take the risk or not? And we're not trying to get answers here, but this is something like we have to consider as well, right? And just to be honest, my brother and I were totally ready to like attend the funeral, but be like outside in the car or like further away. That's the most we can do. But the reality of it is that funeral is one thing. If your relatives get checked into the hospital, they are alone, right? And that whole process from ICU to anything, I mean, the best part about it or good part about it is the healer, right? But if they don't, I don't think anyone is ready for the grieving process in the pandemic.
Correct.
Right? It's just, man, I don't.
It's
tough, man. The way you see how they bunkos up the deceased, how I mean, they treat it with a lot of respect. Okay, just off the bat, but it's heartbreaking, man, to see like your relative or your loved ones be packaged like what's that thing? Like radioactive goods or radioactive items, right?
I see.
Do you think Zoom calls or video calls are enough during something like this?
It's rough, man.
I mean, if you think about it, of course it won't be enough. But then your question might be more along the lines of, should it be enough? Because obviously the answer is not. The main, you'll definitely want to be there with the person. But should we adjust our expectation and say, you know what, it's on us, it's on our sense of whether we want to keep ourselves safe, people safe, or whatever, or how far we're willing to bend the SOPs or bend the rules for the betterment of our, like, I guess, for our agenda.
Yeah.
In terms of like, say, our relative passing away. I don't know. I don't think in general it's enough, but I think in cases, if there are COVID positive elements in play, it should be enough. It should be made enough, law. We have to make do with it.
Make do is a tough way to say it for sure, right? Like,
yeah. That's the worst way to say it, but we have to make do because of how we are. And then you see people out there in cafes.
I would say
naughty.
Instead of I mean, obviously the goal is to just be safe, so we don't need to make do, don't need to deal with it, right? That's obviously the thing. But
correct.
Coming back to grieving, we all would definitely want to have a normal death. We all would want to pass away peacefully, right? We all want to be able to be with our loved ones, around it, so on and so forth. But I think in this season, what we want to at least want to try and talk about is something very tough. Again, that's why we give the warning at the start of this episode, right? When we did post a bit of what has happened, a lot of people reached out and said that they lost a father, an uncle, a sibling, a friend. And the saddest part is grieving without being able to see them one more time, right? It's really that human factor why we send people off before they go and study overseas, right? It's that human factor of why when after a Chinese New Year dinner or something, everyone goes to the gate and sees them off, right? We appreciate that last goodbye for a while. And now during a season like this, unfortunately for the greater good, there are things that cannot be done. And I feel that, first and foremost, for anyone who's going through a situation like this, really our condolences, our love, our wishes to you and the family, and everyone involved. But I think one thing that I think personally we held on to as well was, yes, I think it's really tough for anyone to not be there to send people off, right? So if you can do that, props to you, seriously. But the reminder is, I'm not trying to say this harshly or anything, right? But you are potentially saving a few other lives as well by sticking to the SOPs. Okay? I think that's the difficult thing, but the only encouragement I can give people, because, I'll just use my personal story. I have a kid, a 2-year-old kid, and she cannot get a vaccine, right? She's not allowed to, obviously, for obvious reasons. And I have a wife. My one act of not being able to send off my grandpa and follow the SOP potentially have saved both my wife and my kid, And the encouragement that I have was, number one, I know that my grandpa and my grandma, they know that I love them and I care for them, But now I also know my family knows that I love them as well. And the encouragement is always, I think, you need to do this for people who are still here, right? And if that's not the encouragement itself, right? It's we're talking about grieving, just so we're talking about grieving, okay? Talk about the reason that I can talk about it, or the reason that I'm open to talking about it, is because I think you kind of accepted the fact that, number one, this whole season that we're going through is not regular. It's not normal by anyone's standard, right? Don't take it upon yourself. Don't take it so hardly upon yourself. Cry it out, let it out. It's fine. But then get back into it when you can and fight for who is still around. And that's so important.
Correct.
It's quite hard to, I don't know, it's quite hard to say positive things, but if you feel, I mean, this is what the Chinese people are, just mourning in general, okay? If you feel you could have done something better, do that something better for people who are still here.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
There's a time for mourning. There is always a time for mourning, but don't make that time for mourning your entire life. You know? Do you think about it as the way that, let's just say we use your grandparents. Your grandparents would not want your life to be saying, "Oh no, I should have done better." You know, I miss them so much. You know, it's that's why people say that you got to celebrate their life. You celebrate their life by living your best life. You know, that's what they would have wanted. So definitely mourn. Take the time. You know, like what I can tell everybody listening now, right, is this: you're not weak if you cry. You're not weak if you mourn. You know, there is a time
and it's
for
not
all
sway
these things.
if you talk about it.
But it's not sway. But you gotta understand that after a certain point of time, you're like, okay, now let's move on and then live my life the way so and so wanted me to live it, or the way I believe truly fits, that truly honors them, honors their life. Absolutely. You know?
Yeah. That's a good point, man. I think honestly, there's still so much to talk about and unpack about this topic. And it only become more convoluted when you have something like the COVID freaking situation happening in the world, right? But let's really come back again next time to talk about what growing up in an Asian culture is like, the things that we can do when it comes to death. I don't know. I feel like there's so many traumatic experiences I had in funerals, but we'll leave that for another time. But for everyone else, thanks so much for tuning in. I know this is a bit of a heavy topic one, and I think for us, Ming and I, we're still doing the best that we can to support our mom and the family that's going through this. Thank you so much, Lucas, for being here.
Thanks, man.
Do you guys have a one line? Actually, you guys gave some.
I just say, if anyone wants to share their story, feel free. And if you're okay with us sharing it, and for everyone's benefit, to talk about it on the stream. Stream pula. See, I've been streaming too much. For talking about it on the podcast,
too much, man.
Let us know, and because this is a very healthy discussion that we can put out, right?
I'm all wise words out, but what I can say is that don't make just live your best life. Don't make a bad time your whole time. It's not your whole life. It's just really good. An incident. You know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah, it's true. I love that.
Live your life, guys.
This week's recommendation for our songs comes to you by our man Charlie Lim. Light Breaks In. This is it.
That's a bop.
That's delicious. Thank you, Jeremy, for putting that in. Guys, if you guys want more takeaway table content, we're available on Spotify and YouTube. Get caught up with all the latest shows with a brand new season of stuff coming to you this July. Make sure you check out the Fashion Week podcast and all that Lucas is doing over on his socials as well. And if you want to see us play some games, we're on 1-2 Juice. But more importantly, if you want to be a part of the takeaway community, we have a Discord server, and that is, Jeremy, what's the Discord server?
Discord.gg/the takeaway table.
Ooh, truly a genius.
Nice. What a lovely voice from nowhere.
What a lovely voice. Really, thank you so much, Jeremy.
We don't have to talk about death on the server every single day. Okay, there are other things to talk about.
No, we don't have to.
Please don't.
Man.
I do sometimes, quite often, but we don't have to. But for everyone else, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's a bit hard to enjoy, but hey, smaller doses, it's like a vaccine, right? We give you a small dose of something that's hard to swallow.
Twice.
And then you get better. We'll do another one real soon with Lucas again.
I just hope everybody gets something from this.
Yeah, guys. But once again, thank you so much for listening. If you guys are going through a similar time, our hearts and love to you guys as well, to yourself, to your family members. And if you have a story to share, just like Megan said, send it in, and hopefully you can encourage other people as well. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great week ahead. Stay safe. Stay clean. These numbers are disgusting.
Wash
and
your hands,
we don't want
guys.
to be just another number. That's right. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.